Hi everyone, Pablo here from Unique Japan. How are you? February 9th, 2022, coming to you live from my home in the UK. Where else? I haven't been to Japan in a couple of years now, but you know, the skies are brightening. Hopefully pretty soon I'll be able to make it there. Anyway, I have a very special sword that I wanted to showcase today, because I'm going to London to visit a client and hand over a very special tachi that, you know, I don't see very often, to be honest. These are once in a while something very special comes around to Unique Japan, and I would be remiss if I did not share this tachi with you and share some of the qualities with you for posterity's sake, saving it on video for the years to come. So, without further ado, shall we get into it? Let's do it. The sword is right here. It is by a swordsmith called Kagehide. And he worked in, ready for this? 1259 to 1260 area, around that time period. So what is that? Almost 800 years ago? It's unbelievable. This is the stuff, right? So here's the sword in shirasaya. I'll open up the blade soon. The shirasaya, of course, the sayagaki, is done by Tanobe sensei, as often we have for many of the very top tachis and katanas and, well, the top swords in general. You'll see Tanobe sensei sayagaki on them. That'll be in the description. So I will link in the description below the, you know, a sort of a PDF, a link to the PDF that will have a translation of this sayagaki. So Kagehide is the younger brother of a very famous swordsmith called Mitsutada. So Mitsutada ranked even higher, but Kagehide was no slouch himself. And like I say, he worked in the Kamakura period. So that Kamakura period from 1185 to about 1333, that's considered to be, well, the golden age of Japanese swords. And of course, these swords were carried on horseback, right? So that's why the tachi. So they were long blades, and they had this curvature on the waist so that they can slash downwards, right, on their enemy. So horseback, you got to think these swords are all horseback held swords. And of course, as the years progressed into the Muromachi period, and you had sort of infantry battles on hand-to-hand combat, a lot of these very long swords, as you've seen in my catalogs, and that they shortened down from, let's say, a nagasa of 75, or nagasa means length, so a length of 75, 80 centimeters, for example, gets shortened down to the more traditional size of about 69 or 68 centimeters, 70 centimeters in cutting edge, right? So I'm going to open up this blade, and I want you to take a look at the curvature first of the blade. It's very important. The qualities of the steel are going to be very difficult to find and capture on video, but still, it's more impressive. What's very impressive about the sword is, of course, the koshizori. And I'm also going to show you that this sword is signed, right? Now, I just mentioned how a lot of swords are shortened, and then, of course, when you shorten a sword, you lose the signature that's on the tang of the sword. But this one actually has the first character, kage, still intact, which is just awesome to see that, right? Okay, so here is the blade, okay? And I'm going to try and curl back here, but do you see this wonderful koshizori? Koshi means waist, right? So it's curved right here. Look at that. It's not a very, very long sword, actually. It's 60, in its current, what is 69.4? That's right, 69.4 is the actual curvature. Because it's shortened by, I don't know, about maybe 5 centimeters or so, perhaps a bit longer than that. The original length was probably in the mid-70s, right? So 75, upwards to 79 at the highest, I think. But look at that beautiful curvature on the blade, right? Just spectacular. So wonderful. And yeah, just gorgeous piece. Now, he worked in Bizen, of course, is the Bizen school, Osafune, Bizen-Osafune. So most of the very top swords, of course, in that time period are from Bizen tradition. So let me open up the Shirasaya now and just get to the Nakago, because this is the stuff. This is the habaki, by the way, very gorgeous habaki. Right? So remember, the habaki goes inside. It's a kind of a collar, fits here and secures inside the tsuka, or the hilt, and inside the scabbard as well, right? So it kind of secures the sword so it doesn't wobble inside the scabbard. Okay. So normally when I open up a sword, I would look here and I would see the signature. But because this is tachi is on the opposite side, because the signature always was on the outside of the swordsmith when he's carrying the blade. Here it is. Now, kage, right there. Can you see that? Kage. That's a big mother, kage. Now, at the very bottom, hide, so there's two characters, kage, and this would have been hide right here. But hide is cut off, and so you just have the kage, but. You have this character here, very important character, because this chisel mark suggests is the top radical of hide. So it is without doubt on the Juyo certificate. This is of course a Juyo token sword. It says that there's no doubt this is definitely Kagehide. Now sometimes you see these swordsmiths would have small characters. In this case, it's this big chunky, kage character. I just love it. Kind of reminds me of Nelson. He's like giant writing right now as he's learning how to. He's only 5, he's learning how to write, so these giant characters. But there it is, kage. Isn't that gorgeous? I mean, I know I'm spending a lot of time showing you a character, but I can honestly say there's so many swords from the Kamakura period where signatures are lost. And to know that the signature is still intact, it's just wonderful. In fact, there's only 11 signed swords of Kagehide known in existence, right? So this is one of 11 swords of Kagehide. He was ranked Jojo Saku, so a superior, highly superior swordsmith, and just made fantastic work. So let's see if I can capture some of the workings of the sword. There's a lot of nie in this blade. And what's kind of cool is that you'll see a kind of a serrated, like a serrated look to the blade. So although you have the choji midade and choji, the kind of clove blossoms, there's actually a kind of a serrated look, a little bit different from what you would see maybe in Mitsutada. There's mokume hara. It's hard to tell, but it's especially here on the mokume is that sort of burl grain, right? Especially on the shinogi is very beautiful. But you know what's interesting? Even though this is a Bizen tradition sword, a lot of kinsuji, lots of hataraki, kind of looks soshu in some sense, right? I see tobiyaki and everything. So it's kind of a transition sword in some sense between Bizen and the soshu tradition. I could look at this sword for days on end. It is absolutely spectacular to hold this kind of history in your hands. And you see the little tobiyaki, right? The little spots there. Isn't that great? Boom, boom, boom. Oh, maybe I can capture some of the mokume here. This is the shinogi, right? The shinogi is that sort of flat part, right, that runs up here. The shinogi ji. The shinogi is actually the line itself that the light's pointing up. But the shinogi ji, or the body of this, like the flat part for ease of communication. If you see these older swords, the older blades will have a lot of workings inside here. Workings meaning that you'll see the mokume hara, the round burl grain. And itame hara as well. So, but if you get into the Shinto period from the 1600s, that flat part here will become more masame, more straight grain. So that's a kind of a good way of telling whether a sword is older or not. Just look at the shinogiji. How much is in there? How much forging can we see? And if we see a lot of burl grain and itame, you can bet your life that this is an older sword. Ah, dear. Beautiful stuff. It's just a magnificent blade. Still, quite hefty, but not too heavy. But you're slashing downwards. It just shines. A genie. You'll see that a lot here, a lot of genie. G is, of course, the body of the sword. And nie is the martensite crystals. And the crystals, when you hold a sword like this, actually, it's very good to just kind of hold it from a distance. And you just let the sword come to you, in a sense, You don't have to go so close in. I mean, it does help to see some of the, the work, in further detail. But it's just it's like a beautiful woman. You don't just like stare at her face right up close, right? You just sort of admire her from from a distance, right? Maybe that's a kind of a weird analogy, but that's how I see it. These kind of blades. It's like you just admire the blade, admire the sword. But having said that, if you do want to see blades up close, do what Nelson did. My son, Nelson, 5 years old, took a pair of binoculars that I sometimes use to look at birds and things. And Nelson dropped it right on the floor. Bang, broke it. Unhappy dad. When I saw him break the thing, he kind of went, ooh, and sort of ran away. I picked up the binoculars and I looked in, like this, and I could tell, and I said, wait a second, and I could actually see, and then, close up. So, believe it or not, these broken binoculars, I put some tape on here, so it doesn't, the plastic that was broken doesn't get to my hands. But this, this binocular, believe it or not, from around right here, I can see just the gorgeous details of the blade. So it's a magnifying glass. It's turned into a magnifying glass. Talk about a happy accident, right? Funny boy. Okay, let me put back the blade here. Inside Shida Saya. Okay, the Mikugi is always hard to find, but now, as you've probably seen in most of my videos or in catalogs, you'll see that these older swords are just in Shida Saya, right? Not many times do you see a Kosher Dye with the blade. And that's because, older collectors and people that really care about these blades that are from 700 years, 800 years old. Obviously, the fittings are coming at a later date, and in some sense, it's just decoration, and so the focus should always be on a Japanese sword, to the blade itself. But in certain situations, a blade like this comes with just magnificent Kosher Dye, and I wanted to just showcase this Kosher Dye as well, because the sort of yin-yang combination here is absolutely fantastic. So now, before I show you this Kosher Dye, I want to mention one point. Kage, from Kagehide, the first character Kage, it means shadow in Japanese. Kage means shadow. So we've built a lot of custom Kosher Dye projects at Unique Japan, and I'm always trying to find some kind of inspiration, whether it's coming from the smith's name, maybe where the smith worked. Of course, from the client, him or herself, if you're building a Kosher Dye, if the person's working, let's say, as a naval officer, spending a lot of time on sea, so why don't we build a Kosher Dye that matches, or you find fittings that have waves on it, or fish, or something that's nautical in nature. To me, this Kosher Dye that we're going to look at right here was inspired by the name Kage, and the character Kage meaning shadow. I think it's even possible that they intentionally cut the second character of Hide off, so they just show Kage, because when you look at this sword and this Kosher Dye, all you think, for me, what I see are shadows. It's dark, and and you'll see that dragons and other little decorations. It's all in a kind of shadow feeling. So let's take a look at it now. Okay, so here's the Kosher Dye. See how it's all dark, black silk right here, very old ray skin, and a crawling dragon right here. Crawling dragon. Look at the tsuba, just nice and black, living in the shadows, right? In the shadows, kage. What's very cool is that you have this. Let's take a look at this. This is a Yoshioka tsuba, actually. Do you see kind of like the grain pattern, but kind of the chiseled pattern that matches the saya. Now the saya is a kind of a naname, or a spiral-shaped kizame saya. So it's kind of spiral, kind of almost like a rope design. But when you hit it on the light, see the shadows that appear? Kage. I am sure that the inspiration behind this Kosher Dye is all because of the Kage character. Now, what lurks in the shadows? Dragons, right? Dragons lurk in the shadows. So we have dragons here, and we have a dragon right here on the kurikata. This is where the sageo goes, right? There's a dragon right here. Let me just try and get that in focus for you. Yeah. Actually, we had the Kosher Dye certified, and we found that the fittings, the NTH case of the fittings are made by Mitsutada that worked in Kyoto. But it's all in a kind of cloud dragon style. This is a handachi to Kosher Dye, unbelievable quality. Like, this is daimyo stuff, top daimyo stuff. Look at this. Where's that dragon? There it is. Dragon. Can you see him right there? I'll have some, Eric Bosek took some great pictures of this sword, of course, and as he always does, and so in the catalog you'll see some of the details of the dragons. Now, I want you to think about this. Dragons represent a kind of challenge. They live in places that are unknown, in the shadows, and I think there's a call to action in this blade. I think, the dragons are always guarding gold, right? And they're in the shadows. And these are places, it's almost like a call to heroic action, I think, on the part of the samurai. Samurai before battle often would obviously would not know what the enemy has in store for him. So there's obviously trepidation going on. There's nervousness. You're going into parts unknown, right? But if you voluntarily go into these parts unknown, into these places that scare you, that frighten you, but you do it anyway, and you come out on top, then the gold is yours, right? So I think this whole Kosher Dye is a call to action. It represents, the owner, the samurai, even all of us. We can take some clues from a sword like this to make those difficult decisions. Things that maybe you've been putting off, difficult phone calls to make, maybe switching jobs, doing things that would appear very risky, just like going into battle. But the dragons are there to confront you, but you attack the dragon, you slay the dragon, and you grow. And you grow because you've challenged, you've confronted your fears, you've confronted the areas of your life that are there in front of you, and you can find a great deal of meaning in that. So for me, this whole Kosher Dye, when I look at it, I just think the harmony, the yin and the yang of a sword and its fittings. I look at a deep sense of meaning, and just something that you just don't see very often, right? In blades. So have a think about that. Think about your life and places that you potentially can things that maybe you've been putting off for a while, and say, God, I just got to do this now. I got to make these challenges. I gotta slay these dragons, because with every dragon you slay, you get stronger, you get bigger, and you get a little bit wiser as well. So, yeah, slay your dragons, guys. This Kizami Saya will be packed up along with Kagehide very soon. By the way, that Kizami Saya, the Kosher Dye, received a Tokubetsu Hozon, which is not very easy to get. So that received Tokubetsu Hozon, and the blade itself got Juyo in the year 2000, in the 46th Juyo Shinsa. So, like I say, look at the description in the PDF description, and learn about these swords. And if one day something big like this a big sword like this wants to make it to your collection, I'd be more than happy to serve you. But hopefully we'll see more and more of these kind of high quality swords at Unique Japan, and swords that may not necessarily come 700 or 800 years ago, but we can find great meaning in these pieces, and care for them. Let them serve as a sense of inspiration for you and your life. The kind of commitment towards, in a kind of a positivity sense of way, right? Where so much negativity, so much fear recently, just fight that fear crap and just go for it, and let these swords inspire you to do that. All right. So, without further ado, I guess I should just say goodbye. And I'm looking forward to serving all of you. And just a shout out to everyone who's reached out in the last catalog. Swords went by very quickly. Yeah, look for that meaning in your life, because some brighter stars and skies are ahead. All right, cheers now. Bye for now.